This is a bit strange. I haven't seen anyone do this in live sound, but in this video, I'm going to show you how to have automatic reverb. So when the song is playing, we have reverb. When someone is talking, the reverb goes away. And then when we play again, the reverb comes back. And it's all automatic. It doesn't require anyone to be muting and unmuting the reverb or doing anything on the mixer. Now you might say, why would you ever need to do that? Well, in my church, we don't have a bunch of volunteers to do sound. And yes, there's me, but 99% of the time I'm either playing an instrument or leading worship. And although I have mixing station open on my phone all the time, but I can't really focus on mixing if I'm playing an instrument. So I thought, what if I could do this automatically? Because on the live streaming, if you've seen previous video, I can link them up here. I have this automatic. The crowd mics and the reverb come in automatically and go away automatically. So I thought, would it be possible to also do the same thing in the room? And the answer is yes, and it works every single time and it sounds incredible. So first I'm going to show you the way I'm doing it, and that's the easiest way if you're already mixing your live stream in a DAW. However, if you're not doing that, I will also show you another way to do it just with the console. So here's my Reaper template. I'm mixing my live stream in Reaper, and I have in here the reverb that I'm using. It's the Valhalla Supermassive. And this reverb is first of all free, and it sounds amazing. It sounds way more beautiful than your average reverb on your mixer. So I'm using the Bright Room preset, and I have the delay on 40 milliseconds and the wrap on 40%, mix all the way up, width all the way up, feedback 35, density 75. That's it basically, and just have an EQ before it. So I'm doing a low cut at 200 Hertz, and everything above 10K, I'm just attenuating it down with a high shelf. That EQ is before the reverb, just to take out the very low frequencies and the sometimes distracting very high frequencies. And I have the same send levels from the live stream reverb to the in the room reverb. So you can see piano, guitar, drums, everything, vocals. Crowd microphones is going to the reverb. Now, the reason I separated these two, I tried at first to just send the same exact reverb out to the room, and it was good actually, but later I decided that I want a bit more control, so I duplicated the sends, and the same exact things are going to that other reverb that is exactly the same, but now I can change the levels in that reverb if I think that in the room I might need less of that or more of that in the reverb. So that's the only reason that I'm separating them. And if I open the routing of that track, I'm not sending it to the master mix. So this second reverb doesn't go to the live stream mix. So now we have a reverb that is always on, but I don't want it to be always on. I want it to turn on and off on a certain condition. And what is that condition? It's that the drums are playing. Now you might say, why not the piano? Why did you choose the drums? And the reason for that is sometimes before the song, the worship leader might be saying something and the piano would be playing. I don't want the reverb to come in during speech. I want to make sure that we are actually singing. Or at least in my mind, I want the reverb to come in when the music is busy enough to have the need for the reverb to make space. And when we're playing the drums, it is busy enough. So that's why I chose the drums. I could have chosen something else. How am I gonna make the drums open and close the reverb? I'm gonna hold the routing button of the drums and drag it over to the reverb. That will create a send. And then I'm gonna click on the routing button of the reverb and make sure that this send is coming on channels 3 and 4, and make sure that the gate has auxiliary inputs as the detector input. So now the drums is the trigger that will open the gate. I set a threshold. I make the attack 500 milliseconds, hold 1000 milliseconds, and release 1000 milliseconds. In my experience, I found these are good times to make the coming in and the closing off of the reverb very smooth. So it's not a surprise. And I'm going over this very quickly because I already explained this in other videos about live streaming. So if you need a slower explanation, you can watch one of the videos linked up here. Now, if the drums are not playing, there's no sound on the reverb because there's a gate on it. And if the drums are playing, the gate will open and we will have sound from that reverb, but it's not going anywhere yet. So I'm gonna click in the sends area and create a hardware send, and I'll send it on the last 2 USB channels. I'm using the MR18 mixer at my church, so that would be output 1718. And now on the mixer, I would choose one of these effect returns channels that I'm not using, and I will go to input and decide that it's a USB input, because by default, these are returns for the effects. But since I'm not using any effects in these slots, these are kind of useless unless I use them as a USB input. So you can see on the other channel, channel, USB is off. On this one, I turned on USB and chose USB 1718. So now the inputs that are already going from the mixer to Reaper to be mixed for the live stream are also going to that reverb, and that reverb is going back into the mixer on this effects returns channel. And now I go to the main section and I make sure that main stereo is on. So this is going to the main mix in the room, and I can adjust the level of this. And now I have an automatic reverb in the room and it sounds amazing. I also sent this to our ears. So if we look at the piano monitor, we have this at -10 and all the monitors, and it's not too much, but also not too little. So I can hear a good amount of reverb. And because the crowd mics in Reaper are very compressed and they are also being sent to that reverb, it gives me a lot of ambience in my ears. So it feels very good. It's not overwhelming because if I just send more crowd microphones into my headphones, it kind of covers up other things. But the reverb just sounds very soft and very empty. So it gives me the ambience, but it doesn't clutter up the mix. Now you may be thinking, why would I send the crowd microphones to that reverb that I'm also sending to my main speakers? Will it create a feedback loop? No, it will not. Will it sound weird? Also no, it sounds actually pretty good. Like imagine that the people that are singing in the congregation also get reverb. It's hard to explain with words, but you just have to trust me on this one. It actually sounds really good in the room. I'm just happy that this idea that I had actually worked really well and it sounds amazing. And it serves the purpose that I wanted to serve, which is bring beautiful reverb during the song and take away the reverb during speech. Now let me show you how to do this just on the mixer without using a DAW. You will not have this amazing reverb that you get if you're using a plugin. And also it's a bit costly in terms of channels because you will use 2 outputs and 2 inputs on the console just for this. Now I'm using the MR18, but you can use also the M32 or any other console. We're sending reverb to the reverb bus. Right, you're sending these microphones and then it's going through that reverb effect and then coming back into the mix on the effects returns channel. So that is what goes into the main mix and that channel is on the main left right. Now what we will do for this case is we will remove it from the main left right, but we will keep all the sends going to that bus and coming back on this channel. Now what's this channel? It's effects 1 and it's a return. So if you go to the routing menu and you go to the outputs page, it will be effects 1 left, 1 right. When you see effect like this, this is the effect bus. When you see FX with right and left next to the number, this is the effects returns channel. So I'm going to assign 2 of the XLR outputs to be that sound of the reverb. XLR output, for example, 1 and 2 will be effects 1 left and 1 right. And then you're going to connect these 2 XLR outputs to 2 XLR inputs on your mixer. Let's say you plugged it into XLR input 15 and 16. You're going to link these channels. So I'm going to hit the stereo link. Now these are together. Then you will go to the gate, turn on the gate, raise threshold, and give it a trigger. How will you give it a trigger? It's the key source right here. So right now it's on self, which means the channel is looking at its own signal to decide if it's open or closed. But if I want the drums to trigger that gate, I will go here and say that it's channel number 3. And now the sound of the reverb that is coming out of this return, out of the XLR outputs back into these 2 inputs and into these channels will stay off because the gate is on until the drums play. And when the drums play, it will trigger the gate on these channels and the gate will open and we will have the sound of the reverb. So to recap, send sounds to the reverb, put a gate on the reverb, and decide a certain channel to trigger the reverb to open the gate and to give you the reverb. And when there's no sound on that channel, the gate closes, you have no reverb. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button and click on the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you there.